Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Vendetta Sports Media's T20 Cricket World Cup coverage. I'm Jerry Walker, and with me again, as always, is Jarrod Prosser. Jarrod, how you doing this morning or this evening in Australia?
No, it is this morning again. It's about 12:15 in the morning. So
Okay.
you're bang on the first time, just the wrong day.
Uh,
But no, doing well.
nice. There's some interesting cricket going on these last couple days. Unfortunately, our two teams, England and Australia, weren't able to play due to rain, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Let's start it out with this first match of day 12, South Africa and Bangladesh. Really, this is kind of what we expected to an extent. South Africa won by 104 runs, going 205 for 5 to Bangladesh's 101. Did you expect anything different from this match?
Oh, look, I expected a South African win. I didn't expect it to be a blowout. This one was. This was a stonking. The Bangladeshis got crushed in this one. But when you consider, Sri Lanka haven't gone through the preliminary rounds like, I suppose neither did Bangladesh, but the Proteas had their first match effectively washed out as well. They got a little bit of playing, but got a no result out of it. So they'd be chomping at the bit. So I think this was a little bit of, it was almost like an explosion of emotion just coming out. It's like we're so ready to play, and it all just came out in one. It was definitely a quick start though for the Bangladeshis. The South Africans batted first in this one, but they lost Temba Bavuma in the first over, and the Bangladeshis had their tail up, and you're sitting there going, oh, okay, it might just be a wicket, but let's just keep an eye on this. Let's see whether the Bangladeshis can consolidate on this. And that was really about as good as it got. Riley Russo and Quinton de Kock put on 163 for the second wicket. They just battered the bowling to all parts of the ground.
Absolutely. And I mean, Quinton de Kock, he played it outstandingly in that match against Zimbabwe. They got cut short, and he just carried it over again to this match with Bangladesh. 63 from 38, had 7 boundaries and 3 sixes, but it was really Riley Russo that took over as well. 102 runs from 56 balls, finished with 7 boundaries and 8 sixes. He was just whacking the hell out of that ball.
And the thing is, like those sixes, I think one of them carried over the boundary and hit the fence. The rest of them went into the stands. Like, they were huge shots. A couple of those sweeps he had off the spinners were big, but that I think it was a pull shot that he had right after he hit his 100. It was almost like I've hit my 100 now. I'm just going to swing for the fences. And he connected so sweetly. The thing went about 15 rows back. It was a monstrous hit.
Yeah, he was playing out of his mind. But I mean, after those two, South Africa was kind of sitting in a comfortable position. And I guess they didn't need to be too worried about only getting 19 runs from those last 4 batters. But
nobody really had the time to do anything though, Jerry.
That's true as well.
Nobody had the time to really set themselves, get 3 or 4 balls to see what the pitch was doing. It was purely a case of, Quinton and Riley have taken all of the balls. We're just going to have to swing and hope here. But that's the team thing. When you've got plenty of batsmen left in the dugout, you just swing, and if you hit it hard, you hit it hard. If you go out, you go out.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you think of the Bangladesh bowling? I mean, I just really noticed Shakib Al Hassan, who had 2 wickets for 33 in his 3 overs. But besides that, it was kind of just a poor bowling performance from Bangladesh.
Yeah, Al Hassan, I mean, he picked up the 2 wickets. He was expensive, 33 off 3 overs. Mustafizur Rahman, he didn't pick up a wicket, but he only conceded 25 off his 4 overs. He was the only bowler that was even slightly economical in this match. But having said that, I don't necessarily think this was a case of like piss poor Bangladeshi bowling. That they weren't great, the Bangladeshi bowling, but I'm putting this more down to Kock and Russo. They were just out. They batted out of their skins. They were superb.
Yeah, that's very fair to say. But let's bounce into the Bangladesh innings. It wasn't great. Both openers went out in the 3rd over. and it kind of just went downhill from there. No, I mean, only finishing with 101, they never really even tempted to make the chase happen.
They got away to a good start. Sumya Saka got away a pair of sixes pretty quickly. But Henrik Nortier, he came in and he got out Saka and he got his opening partner, Santo, both in the same over, as you mentioned, Jerry, and that triggered a monumental collapse. It was only Liton Das who, easily the best of the Bangladeshi batsmen talent-wise, but he was the only one to really stand up today. He had 34 off 31, and the fact that that 34 stood out so starkly against the rest of the card just showed how badly the rest of his team batted. Nortier and Tabraiz Shamsi, the spinner, they picked up 7 wickets between them, 4 for 10 for Nortier off 3.5 overs. That's astonishing figures.
Yeah,
Pace and precision, and he was superb.
He wasn't. He finished with 16 dot balls, so it wasn't even like he was giving Bangladesh much of an opportunity to really get power behind that ball and put up the runs needed.
Yeah, no, he was excellent, and I think 3 of his 4 wickets, at least 2 of them were bowled. So he was doing the old thing of, I'm going to bowl quick and I'm going to hit the stumps, and if you miss it, you're out. He was. Now, there wasn't a lot of pressure on the South African bowlers with this one. When they've got a 200 runs to defend, you feel like you're in the box seat. But, when Saka got those a couple of sixes, it might have just had a few little butterflies in the South African stomachs. But, yeah, credit to Henrik Nortier. He came in and he just turned the innings on its head. He basically buried the Bangladeshi chase before it got started.
No, absolutely. I mean, he was part of those. He got those first 2 wickets in the 3rd over. And he got another wicket in the 5th, and at that point, you're going 4 for 40 or 47 for 4 at that point, and kind of already looking bad for Bangladesh. But up next for Bangladesh and South Africa. South Africa has to play India, who they're tied with in the group lead, I believe, or they're right.
That is going to be one hell of a cricket match. Like we thought Australia England would be a ripper. Unfortunately, as we'll mention later, they got washed out. But I'm really looking forward to India, South Africa. The way South Africa looked in this match, and even in the shortened game against Zimbabwe, and given India's performances so far, we're about to touch on their other game against Dutch, but those 2 teams both look in tip-top shape. I'm really looking forward to that match.
Yeah, that should be a great one to watch. And then the other one for Bangladesh, they're playing Zimbabwe, who we'll touch on them in a little bit, but they had a famous win this past day. So
ripping match.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But up next, India and the Netherlands. As you said, India kind of dominated that one by 56 runs, 179 for 2 to the Dutch's 123 for 9. And it was really just a story of Virat Kohli and Rohit Shamara, who just took off for that batting.
I think this was a case of India not getting out of second gear, to be honest. This was as easy an innings as the Indians could have hoped for. They only used 4 batsmen. 3 of them made half centuries. So I can guarantee KL Rahul would have been sitting in those sheds feeling like he missed out on a big score here. You mentioned Kohli, 62 not outs. A controlled innings. He still kept the run rate ticking over. He didn't get bogged down, but it never looked like he was in any sort of trouble. He could have batted all day and they wouldn't have got him out. Yadav had 51 not out. He was much more explosive, 7 boundaries in this one. And Rohit Sharma, the veteran opener, a really good innings from him, 4 fours, 3 sixes. He's still got a fair bit of power in him. He's 36 now, I think. And, he's not quite the player he was 10 years ago, but he's still a very, very good batsman in this format of the game. There wasn't really much to speak of from the Dutch bowlers in this one. I don't think any of the Dutch bowlers did anything that will stick in the mind. It was just, it was almost like it was almost like India were playing a practice squad. It was just so so easy for the Indians. They were playing this at half pace and still put up 180 or close to 180.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Yadava, 51, but he only had 25 balls, which showed how important all those boundaries were that he had, finishing with
Yeah.
7 fours, 1 6, and just an impressive batting inning for India all around. And like you said, they didn't have to get too far out of second gear. It's kind of cruise control, and they were always going to be ahead. And then, I mean, as far as the Netherlands inning went, didn't get off to a great start with Vikram just Singh getting out in this third over. After.
And he was just beaten for pace too. He almost looked surprised to be bowled, but he was just straight up beaten for pace. It was a ripping ball. But yeah, the Dutch innings started slowly. A maiden over in T20 cricket is death, and they didn't score off the first over, and from there it just went downhill.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, we were expecting something similar to this, but I thought Max O'Dowd and Basteleda would have put up a little bit more of a fight. They both finished with 16. Max O'Dowd 16 from 10, Basteleda 16 from 23. But besides them and maybe Tim Pringle, who finished with 20, there wasn't much really to speak on of this Dutch batting.
Yeah. Look, six Dutchmen reached double figures, which shows that they were at least able to get in and get starts, but nobody really went on with it. Pringle, as you mentioned, his 20, that was the top score in the innings.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that 6 of them got into double figures showed that this wasn't necessarily a dominant Indian bowling performance, but it was one where I think the golf and class showed. O'Dowd looked good early. Every time he's at the crease, he looks good, frankly. But he contributed to his own downfall. He walked way across his stumps when he didn't need to.
Mm-hmm.
Just opened it up around the legs and got clean bowled. But ultimately, with a really good target and a batting lineup that was just no match for their bowling, even without Jasprit Bumrah, it was a walk in the park. This one, there wasn't really much to say.
Wow.
Even looking at the bowling figures, 4 bowlers took 2 wickets each. Aside from O'Dowd taking a bit of a liking to Arshdeep Singh early, no bowler was really, poor in their economy. It was just like even in the bowling, India didn't really get out of second gear. They just cruised through this one.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Arshdeep Singh. You got wickets on back-to-back balls in the 18th over that kind of just sealed the deal, even though at that point it was fairly obvious that India was going to win with that. But other bowlers, Axar Patel, 2 wickets for 18 runs in 4 overs, and he got out both O'Dowd and Basteleda. So pretty solid bowling performance for him. But it's just such a big gap in talent between India and the Netherlands that there was never really much chance the Dutch had in this one. But as we mentioned,
there's not much more to say about that one. Really, honestly, it was one of those matches that about 4 overs in, you just felt like it was over, and both teams were going through the motions a little bit. There was some really nice hitting from the Indians, but even still, it didn't feel like there was a lot of jeopardy to this game.
Yeah, not nearly as exciting as this next match, Pakistan and Zimbabwe. If you were listening into our last episode, we both said we think Pakistan could win this, but it would be no surprise if we come to this episode and we talk about Zimbabwe winning. And sure enough, that's what happened. Zimbabwe won by 1 run, 130 for 8 to 129 for 8. And Pakistan was so close on that chase, but just wasn't enough at the end of it.
Yeah, Brad Evans at the end, some wonderful bowling from him. But we'll look at the Zimbabwean innings first, since they batted first. A bit of an eye-catching start from Craig Irvin and Wesley Mataveri, but ultimately, outside of that partnership, was a 42-run opening stand between the two of them. It was pretty pedestrian, to be honest, from Zimbabwe. Yeah. They couldn't put together a partnership. They lost, they lost 3 for 0 in the space of 5 balls mid-innings, and Shadab Khan was on a hat-trick at one point. And really, it was only Sean Williams had 31 off 28, scored reasonably well at a reasonable speed. And Brad Evans, a little cameo at the end, 19 off 15, proved to be telling in a tight match.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sean Williams kind of was the leader of that team in terms of runs, but there's a lot of guys who finished with less than double digit runs, including a couple that were out on one ball for nothing, as you mentioned, with the almost hat trick for the Pakistani bowler. But Sikandar Raza, we've talked about how good he is. He only was 9 for 16, which was maybe a little disappointing, but he made up for it on the bowling end for sure. But as far as
Yeah, he did. He did. And look, he needed to because he really looked tied down. And look, credit to the bowlers. You know,
yeah,
Muhammad Wasim, 4 for 24. Shadab Khan, 3 for 23. Harris Ralph, only the one. I love Harris Ralph, by the way. When he burst onto the scene playing for the Melbourne Stars, we are like, who is this bloke? He's amazing. And he just, it was only like a month later, he made his debut for Pakistan, and he's brilliant. He's just so full of energy and personality. I love him.
yeah,
But he only picked up 1 wicket, but conceded just 12 runs from his 24 balls. I mean, if you bowl four overs in a Test match where the pace of scoring is so much slower, and you get 1 for 12, you're pretty happy with that. To get 1 for 12 in a T20 from 4 overs, that's excellent bowling.
yeah, it was. He really had a great inning, 15 dot balls, so it wasn't like he was giving much option to hit. But all three of those bowlers kind of took over for Zimbabwe or for Pakistan and
Mm.
held him to a rather comfortable chase mark total of needing 131. But the Pakistani innings weren't great outside of Shan Masood, who finished 44 for 38 from 38. Mohammad Nawaza,
Mm.
22 for 18, but it was just so close. But they got run out on the very last ball. Trying to,
Yeah, it was a bit of a tepid start from the Pakistanis in their innings. I think I'm assuming a little bit here, but I think it was because they knew they weren't chasing a huge total. But 3 quick wickets put Zimbabwe in control. But the nature of T20, momentum swings wildly. Shan Masuda, you mentioned, had 44, and Shadab Khan, they put on a 50 runs, 52 runs, I think it was, for the 4th wicket. And that moved everything back towards Pakistan with that low total to chase. But Raza, that you mentioned, that man Raza, he turned the game on its head. 3 quick wickets. He got rid of Masood as a part of those 3. And that put the game right on a knife's edge once again. But even with that, the Pakis, yeah, again, it's a small run chase. They still looked the likely victors. And in the final over, they got it down to 3 runs off 3 balls remaining. And Nawaz was looking really untroubled, but Evans just produced 3 fantastic balls to finish that match. He fizzed to a really quick bouncer that kind of took Nawaz by surprise, and he failed to get any bat on it. The next ball, so 2 balls to go, still 3 runs needed. He forced a miscue from Nawaz that saw him caught at mid-off by Irvine. And when Nawaz went out, you saw both batsmen, not just the guy who went out, but the non-striker as well. They both fell to their knees. It was almost like an understanding of, oh, shit,
yeah,
we might have just lost both of our matches at the death, despite being in winning positions. And even that last ball, I think it was Shaheen Shah Afridi had come in, and he was run out trying to steal a second run to tie the match. And the keeper, his name escapes me, the Zimbabwean keeper, I apologise, but he almost fumbled the ball trying to run him out. It was a little bit of a mess of a last few deliveries.
Chakava?
Yes, thank you.
Just Chakava?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was bobbling that almost, and it's a little nervy there for Zimbabwe. I feel like some hearts might have just dropped really quickly on that, but he secured it, got the wicket, and got Zimbabwe the win. But,
and it was you mentioned Masood 44 of 38, and Nawaz. Mohammad Nawaz had the chance to be a hero in this one. He had 22 off 18 before falling on the second last ball, but considering the heartbreaking way in which Pakistan lost that first match, they really needed this, not just from we need to get points on the board perspective, but from an emotional perspective. They played their biggest rival, had them on the ropes, and somehow conspired to lose it. Now they're playing a relative minnow, had them on the ropes, and they've now again conspired to somehow snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah.
Um,
This
like,
this is kind of what we've talked about with Pakistan, as you've mentioned before. They can be really good on some days, but if they're not in their groove, they can just fall apart. And we've seen that twice in their first two
yeah,
matches. Now they're really on the brink of elimination from this World Cup with two
the,
losses in two.
the Pakistanis don't do shades of grey, Jerry. They're either brilliant or they're a liability to themselves.
Yep.
And it often not just swings within the same game, but it can swing between those polar opposites within the same over. And we've seen that in both games so far.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, you have to give some credit to the Zimbabwean bowling. They were chasing, well, the bowlers had a very, very modest total to defend, but they did bowl really well. Brad Evans, as we mentioned, the really good effort to close at the end, but 2 for 25 bowling at the opening and at death. Really good bowling from them. He got rid of Babar Azam at the top of the order with an absolute peach of a delivery. And Sikandar Raza, we said he tore the game open in the middle overs, 3 for 25. And, he was the one that got rid of Masood, who looked like he was going to be able to steer Pakistani innings home.
Yeah.
And a little shout out for blessing Muzarabani, who I just love saying his name.
Yeah.
But he had 1 for 18, but he was really good. He always looked dangerous as well as being economical. On another day, he might have had 3 or 4 wickets. I thought he bowled very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to bring him up because 1 for 18 is pretty solid numbers considering you have Raza going and getting 3 wickets, Brad Evans getting 2. You just needed that third guy to kind of slow down any Pakistani attack.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't defensive bowling. He was looking to get wickets, and he came so close on a lot of occasions. He was unlucky not to be sitting there with 3 for 18 at the end of the day. He was very, very good.
And now Zimbabwe look to their next match against Bangladesh, which they might be going into that thinking they have some confidence and could actually get a win out of that with the way Bangladesh looked against South Africa. But I do believe it's partially how good South Africa was looking and playing in that match.
Yeah.
But Pakistan needs a win in this against the Netherlands. Anything less, they pretty much need to win out and have a lot of help for them to advance to the semifinals. But
yeah, they're both interesting matches, those two. You look at it and you go, well, Bangladesh haven't looked. Yes, South Africa were awesome, but Bangladesh haven't looked great so far. Whereas Zimbabwe have really had their moments in the preliminary rounds and the Super 12s. And the Netherlands, look, they're clearly a class, maybe 2 classes below the Pakistanis. But, man, if there's a team in this tournament that's going to be at rock bottom, it's Pakistan, which probably means they're going to go and hit 260 next innings. But if there is ever a chance to beat Pakistan as a minnow nation like the Netherlands, this is it. Like, they will not get a better opportunity at a World Cup to take down Pakistan.
No, absolutely. And that kind of concludes the Group 2 from the last couple of days. But now Group 1, there were 2 matches, Afghanistan versus Ireland, England versus Australia, both in Melbourne. Last night, this morning in the US, yesterday afternoon, evening in Australia. And the rain just had other ideas. Very sad because we were robbed of potentially 2 competitive matches.
Yeah, fuck you, Melbourne weather is point number 1 to that.
Yep.
But look, let's look at the positives. Australia, England didn't get to play, which means you and I get to remain friends a little bit longer.
Yes, exactly. We didn't have to wait till the final to settle any.
Yeah, we get. Yeah, oh yeah. No, it could be an explosive pod if we get a close game or a controversial game.
Oh yeah.
No, it is a shame. Particularly Afghanistan Ireland, would have been a nice game to watch, but Australia, England, the oldest enemies in cricket, it would have been a peach of a game, especially with England losing their last game. Australia, of course, got thumped by New Zealand, and when I say thumped, like all capitals, thumped by New Zealand before eking out a win against Sri Lanka. England's looked really good against Afghanistan before that shock loss under the Duckworth-Lewis system, so there is an asterisk, but they still lost to the Irish. So this is a game that both teams really needed to win. But having said that, the fact that it's a no result and they split the points, it does create a bit of an interesting little situation in Group 1. So New Zealand is still on top of that group played 2, they've got 3 points. But England, the Irish, and the Australians have all played 3 and are all on 3 points. Now, the Australians are at the bottom because their net run rate sucks after the New Zealand game. But Australia have played New Zealand, they've played England, they've played Sri Lanka. They're the top, they're the most 3 competitive teams in that group. They've got the Irish and the Afghanis next. So considering England still have to play Sri Lanka and New Zealand, there is every chance that Australia at the very least could leapfrog England here and put themselves into the semi-finals at the Pom's expense.
Yeah, absolutely. Major disappointment for England if that happens. It's very possible that Australia, with the much easier matches, could go and get that net run rate up. But we'd have to see New Zealand, Sri Lanka play next, and that'll be interesting. That'll tell us a lot about this group of who needs to do what. With either way, Sri Lanka could, if they win, they'll jump up to first with 4 points, where New Zealand will then be tied with England, Ireland, Australia, 3 matches, 3 points. But if it goes the other way and New Zealand wins, it looks like they're the clear favorites to win this group.
Oh yeah, if they win this, they win the group. There's no, there's no other way around it. Even if they lose to England, because they've got such a positive net run rate after thumping Australia, one more win from New Zealand, I would think sees them top the group.
Absolutely, and then it puts the pressure on England, Ireland, and Australia. And like we've said, I think that leans towards Australia because I don't really believe in the Irish that much. I think they had a good win against England, but a little lucky due to the weather.
Yeah.
But England has to play New Zealand next, and then Sri Lanka, and those are not going to be easy. And both teams would love to knock England out of the World Cup.
Oh, everyone wants to knock off the big boys, and that's Australia, New Zealand, England, South Africa. Everybody wants to knock off the big boys. So, yeah. Look, I honestly, do Australia deserve to be in the box seat? Probably not. Let's be honest here. They haven't played well. Even the win against Sri Lanka took a blinding innings from Stoinis to see them home. But ultimately, the results are what they are. And Australia, I think, box seat to nip up to second place when it's all said and done in Group 1.
Yeah, might not be pretty, but they're getting what they need done.
You'll take it. In a World Cup, you take the results however you get them.
Absolutely. Unfortunately for us, is in Melbourne, I believe, until the 6th of November, which with all the rain.
Well, hopefully all this rain's gone by then.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think we could deal with another week and a half of rain.
No, not at all. But up next, over the next couple of days, we got 4 matches. We have New Zealand versus Sri Lanka, which could be a very interesting match to decide a lot in Group 1. Then we have Bangladesh, Zimbabwe, Netherlands versus Pakistan, and South Africa, India, which is probably the biggest match of those next 4.
Yeah, looking at Sri Lanka, New Zealand up in Sydney tomorrow, just based on New Zealand's form against Australia, you would say they would be the favourites. But, Sri Lanka are rounding into form here, and New Zealand haven't played since last Saturday. It'll be a full week since they've played. So, I don't know, is there going to be rust from the Kiwis? It's unlikely, in all honesty, but there is some elements of intrigue to this one, although the New Zealand's should win pretty comfortably. Zimbabwe-Bangladesh is a really interesting match. Bangladesh are a more talented team, but haven't played exceedingly well, whereas, we mentioned it in our preview pod that what wins you games of T20 cricket isn't your batting. That's what everyone sees, the big sixes, the scores on the board, the quick runs, but it's your bowling that wins you matches. And the Zimbabweans have got this phalanx of young quicks that if 1 or 2 of them go off together, then all of a sudden, they might be in with a chance of stealing any game. So Bangladesh will be the favourite in that one, but I'm going to tip Zimbabwe. I think they might get it done.
Yeah, I like that as well. I do think Bangladesh is the more talented side, but Zimbabwe just has something about them at the moment that they can go off against anybody on any given day, it seems. And I feel like this is one of those matches, but especially the way
I like those young quicks. I like Raza. I think there's enough bowling there that, the one thing about the Bangladeshis is that their batting lineup is pretty fragile. They've got 2 really good players, but the rest of it is pretty brittle. And when you've got like, yes, it's young, it's inexperienced, and it's just green as all hell, the Zimbabwean bowling attack, but they are very, very talented. So I think Zimbabwe's bowling will trump Bangladesh's batting, put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then, I mean, next one up is Netherlands, Pakistan. Both teams kind of need a win. I do lean a little bit more towards Pakistan in this one. I just think after two brutal losses, they're gonna bounce back in some sort of way, shape, or form. But
yeah, I'd love for it'd be a great story if the Dutch got up on this one. But now that the pressure's off, I honestly think Pakistan will shit this in. I think we'll see the very best of Pakistan, and they might win this by 130 runs.
yeah,
It's such a typical Pakistani thing that they bring a talented side to a tournament, and when the pressure's on, they fold, and then when the pressure's off, they play with this like joyous freedom, and everybody looks at them and goes, "Wow, what an amazing team!" But it's too late by then, and we've seen the first half of that story happen already in two defeats snatched from victory. I think we're going to see Pakistan, spread their wings and just batter the Dutch in an almighty thumping.
yeah, and this is completely similar to what saw from Pakistan in the World Cup last year, where they won all 5 of their group matches, finished first ahead of New Zealand and India, and made it to that semifinals. But it'll be interesting to see what they do against the Dutch. But the big match the next 4 days, South Africa versus India, kind of the top 2 teams in that group too, and both have been playing very, very well as of late.
Yeah, I've got no idea which way to tip with this one, Jerry. India, did enough against Pakistan, who did play for the most part really well against them, and as we mentioned earlier on in this pod, they were really just at best at half speed against the Dutch and just romped it home. But then again, South Africa, man, the way they looked in that match against Bangladesh, and quite frankly, the way they opened up against Zimbabwe in that rain-shortened match as well. There's something about the Saffers. The South Africans look really, really good. I'm going to tip India simply because I think India play. Actually, it's in Perth. South Africa traditionally play Perth really well. Now that's enough. That's enough for me to swing it. Yeah, if this was on the Eastern Seaboard, I'd tip India, but South Africa play Perth very, very, very well. So I'm going to run with South Africa in this one, in what will be an absolute match.
Yeah, I think this is going to be up there with the India-Pakistan match in terms of not as quite as much excitement from the crowd, but it's going to be a very, very entertaining cricket match to watch. I think I'm going to lean just slightly towards India. I just like what I've seen from them so far, but without their bowler who you've mentioned before.
Yeah, Jasprit Bumrah, he's so good.
Yeah, and that's a big loss for them. But I think that's all of it from us. Do you have any closing words on what's happened this week or what you're looking forward to?
Rain, go away, come again another day. That's all I can say. We've got no guarantee that the match tomorrow up in Sydney between New Zealand and Sri Lanka is going to go ahead, because as much as Melbourne is copping the brunt of the weather, Sydney's copping quite a bit of it too. So, if New Zealand and Sri Lanka have a no result, that throws open Group 1 even more, which is great for the intrigue, but ultimately we're here to watch the cricket. So I'd much rather watch a cricket match and have the table just be completely normal than have a tight table but no cricket to actually watch. You may as well play like a cricket manager computer game, if you want to just get results. So I really hope we do get to see some matches. We don't have another match in Melbourne for, I don't think we've got one until the semi-finals, perhaps.
Yeah,
so
I think it's the 6th of November when India play
Zimbabwe. You're right. The last game of the Super 12 is the next game in Melbourne. So hopefully we don't really get any more of this, just bullshit weather that we've got here in the southeast of Australia. But yeah, Jerry, I just want to see some cricket. Losing these 2 matches on Friday night, that hurt. I really wanted to see both of those matches. So I just hope we get good weather and we get to see good cricket as a result.
Absolutely. I was even going to get up at 3 a.m. to watch the Australia-England match, but unfortunately got a few more hours of sleep, I guess, but take that for what
Yeah, no, look, silver linings, man.
Exactly. But that's all from us, guys. Thanks for watching in. You can reach out to us on Twitter. You can reach out to Jarrod at hey_it's_JP. Reach out to me at JerryF007. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your ideas on what's happening at the Cricket World Cup. But also check out Vendetta Sports Media's other stuff. We got a lot of NBA coverage coming up, a lot of soccer coverage. Sports all around the world are in full swing at the moment, and it's a great time to be checking out all of our stuff on our website, our YouTube channel. Subscribe to this, see all of our other videos. We got on Twitter, everywhere. We're all around, so check out all of our stuff. Thanks for watching and have a good one.